Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. It is Martin Luther King Jr. Day, the day when everyone Googles MLK quotes and picks something that fits their narrow-minded ideology. So they go, hey, look, I know something. And look, I spent the day going through the Googles and the Facebooks and the Twitters and all of that, looking at Republican legislators pretending they'd be marching over the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma or taking on slave owners. Yeah, that's what they're doing. Picking out their favorite quote, whatever the number one on Google is. Or I gotta think that the RNC puts it out, and this is the one we're using today because it seemed a lot of them used. Well, the same one. Now, granted, these are the people who vote against equality. These are the people who vote against equity. These are the people who vote against humanity at every turn. So on this day, I kind of go, it's disingenuous. Maybe sit down. Maybe sit this one out. Maybe try not to be, woke in this moment. Maybe, shut up. Just a thought. Just throwing that out there because it's interesting to me. Interesting. Again, the very people who pursue the worst policies for the people that King was standing up and fighting for, they're attempting to steal the legacy. I find that ironic and interesting and sad and a whole bunch of things. Now, the National Rifle Association, even they got into it. They tweeted out today, the National Rifle Association celebrates the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his commitment to freedom for every American, regardless of race, color, or creed. Freedom is never guaranteed. We must continue to fight to preserve our liberty, i.e., buy more guns. Now, I do find it odd since, King was shot and killed with a gun, one that was, as I understand, illegally gotten, but never mind, don't look behind the curtain. The NRA wants you to believe that they would have been right there with King. They'd have been marching right there at the Lorraine Motel, standing guard had they known. Now, we know why King was in Memphis when he was murdered. He was there supporting sanitation workers. He was there supporting workers to fight for better wages, hours, conditions. Because economics, something pretty special to him. Because understand, what good is it to have equality if you don't have equality? Now, what caught my attention today, other than the irony of all of these people throwing out these King quotes that are, well, just disingenuous and sad. There was a story out of Arkansas. Disgraceful, horrible. That, just grabbed my attention. Evidently, it broke on Friday. There was a lawsuit. This homeless guy, with a very low IQ. They said the IQ somewhere like 55. 50-year-old man was, just hanging around the police station in Fort Smith, Arkansas. Something I guess he had done all the time. But on this one particular day, he points his finger like it's a gun and he points it at people, and they arrest him for terroristic threats in the first degree. Pointing the finger, remember? Now, everyone agrees he had not the mental capacity to make those threats. But for his own safety, they arrested him and they put him in jail for the concerns, the well-being, the safety of not just the police officer, but him as well. They put him in jail. They're going to get him the help he needs. Now, this guy is 6'2", 200 pounds. Big guy. Big black man. Scary. They lock him up on $1,000 bond. He's homeless. He's broke. He doesn't have the $100 for cash bail to get out. So he sits in jail over a year. For over a year. Now, this isn't unusual. This is the reason that people are against cash bail, because people don't have the resources to be able to get out, where someone with a meager amount of resources could easily get out and go on with their life and deal with whatever legal problems they have and all that. I think of the guy in Philadelphia who stole 3 peppermint patties and served, sat in jail 500 plus days just awaiting for a place to have his trial. Not even sentenced. And that's what this guy is. He has not been sentenced. He's waiting for them to figure out what they're going to do. So much for that right to a speedy trial thing. Well, they lock him up and put him in solitary confinement for over a year. I'm just going to read the Newsweek article. From then, everything else that could have gone wrong for Mr. Price did. His mind lost, his health gone, and seemingly no one paying attention to his well-being. Price was dead a year later at 51. He was found in solitary confinement cell with his eyes wide open, naked, starved, dried saliva on his corners of his mouth, in a pool of standing water so large at his feet he shriveled. He had long since had his medication taken away. Toward the end, he resorted to eating his own feces and drinking his own urine. They starved this man to death. And all along, they said, oh, every day's checked. They checked on him every day. Inmate's okay. Now, this is a 200-pound guy, 6'2", 200-pound guy, big guy. When they weighed him for the autopsy, and the autopsy photos are disturbing to say the least, he weighed just 90 pounds. 90 pounds. This is America, friends. This is Arkansas. So when I see Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the governor of Arkansas, coming out talking about, we need competition in schools and, we need to take on those failing schools, I'm of the mindset it's time to start breaking up these failed states. It's time we stop funding these failed states like Arkansas, like Mississippi, like Alabama, who, oh, by the way, Mississippi and Alabama have an interesting little tradition today on Martin Luther King's birthday. You know what that is? They also celebrate Robert E. Lee Day. Bipartisanship. Because, they should go together. So I'm in this moment where it's time maybe we start talking about defunding these failed states. Because clearly they're not protecting the civil rights of their citizens. They don't care about their citizens. Because if you listen to Sarah Huckabee Sanders, and this is where my mind went, she said, the schools are failing, we need to get rid of them, and because it's all about the children. Well, you know what? It's all about the citizens. And it's clear that these states cannot protect their citizens. So it's time we start breaking up these states. It's time we start breaking up these failed states. But as I read this story, and I'm just heartbroken, because the humanity, how do you sit and watch somebody starve to death right before your very eyes? How do you watch somebody go from 200 pounds down to 90 pounds over a year and starve to, and be in the condition? How do you do that? How does a human being do that to another? And why are those people in any position of power whatsoever? So for those who say, well, it's a lot better than it used to be, it might be better, but I don't know that's a lot. I used to be one of those people who thought, it's not about black and white, it's about green. It's the economic disadvantages and it's all that. But back in 2015, when we went on our civil rights tour, and we went to all of those places throughout the South that treated black people really, really badly, that now have museums going, look how bad we were to them. And here, come be, disaster tourists. And you see those images and you see those photos and you see that it's heartbreaking. It's angering. So to hear Republicans say, well, you want to learn about critical race theory, and yeah, I want to learn actual history. so that maybe this doesn't happen. Today, they starved a man to death in a jail cell where he was supposed to be for his own good, for his protection. Remind me, next time someone wants to protect me, don't call them. Want to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. Going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
I gotta tell you, I keep coming back to this. You know, I don't know how you can do to a human being what those folks in Fort Smith, Arkansas did to that man. I have no idea. I have no idea. Color of your skin, I don't get it. Let's go to the phones. Got Alice on line 1. Alice, how we doing?
Oh, we're doing okay. I can't even watch an animal starve, let alone a human. And I tend to agree with you that we need to defund these failing southern states.
The sad reality is...
Enough.
No, the reality is, Alice, is we spend so much money on propping them up. We give our tax dollars from if you're Massachusetts, if you're New Jersey, if you're California, you've got to be flipping mad because you're funding them. You're funding this kind of dysfunction. And what we know is they're failed governments. They have lower wages, less health care for their workers. During the pandemic, more people died because of their failed leadership. We know the work environments are less safe. They're covered by less health care. Life basically just all over worse. And yet we're funding this, so what? So that we can make some rich people even richer?
Well, yes, and not only that, is their stupidity affects the rest of us also. I mean, let's just take a look at Texas. You know, all of a sudden they were wanting to sue this state and that state, and because their civil rights of their voters, all this kind of nonsense. And they're basically killing the rest of us by spreading the COVID germs. But hey, it's just crazy. But you have to remember, Rick, and I'm totally serious when I say this to you, you have to remember this, that those Southern people actually believe that black people are not human. And I'm not joking about this. They literally believe that, they look human, but they're not the same as us.
Yeah, there's a sense. Look, when I was in Georgia for a couple of weeks, I kept hearing that kind of frame that he's a good one, he'll do what he's told, that kind of stuff that you would hope went away years ago. I'm not going to go with all people in the South are like this, but yeah, there's definitely an element there. Absolutely, without question. I agree with you.
There is. But you know what? All we can do is fight a good fight. You have a good evening, Rick.
Thanks, Alice. Appreciate it. No, I'm serious about this. It's time to start defunding these failed states. It's time for the federal government to go in and start protecting people. This kind of stuff cannot happen. You go, well, it's just some local yokels. Yeah, that's the problem. That's the problem. It's infuriating. The segue, not a good one. Because I'm going, how do I go from, because I'm angry about this situation, but I'm also angry about the fact that, we keep hearing about inflation. We keep hearing about, all of the pain and suffering. Have you noticed that since the election, Republicans haven't been talking about, inflation very much? They want a recession, but they haven't been talking about the inflation so much. Because we're not really suffering from inflation. We're suffering from corporate greed. We're suffering from the rich and powerful being able to line their pockets at the expense of the rest of us. And I point today to the story of Wendy's, because Wendy's has risen their prices again, I guess an additional 5% this year. And the CEO of Wendy's blames it on, it's those workers' fault. It's the wage increases. We had to raise the prices because, those workers demand wages. It's the cost of commodity. It's not us. No, it's not us. Yet the real story, Wendy's profits jumped 36% in 2021. And net income was up 70%. So again, it's not inflation. It's good old-fashioned American corporate greed. And I said this from day one. When the first report came out saying, we're suffering from inflation. No, it's not inflation. This is by choice. This is corporate America going, aha, here's an opportunity to line our pockets. Now understand, their profits increased 36% in 2021. Now they're complaining that it's the wages, yet 87% of their workforce make less than $15 an hour. 17% of their workforce make less than $10 an hour. I'm sorry, I don't see am I missing something? Or wait a second, maybe it's the CEO's pay that's caused all the inflation. Because again, if you put me in a room with Bill Gates or with Elon Musk, well, maybe not Musk anymore, but if you put me in the room with Gates or with Bezos, yeah, we're going to be gazillionaires together. I'm still poor, but the average is really good. Now, the reason I bring up Wendy's, because they jacked up their prices, complaining it's those greedy workers, yet we see the profit margins. And the story today, about an hour ago I found this, over at investing.com, they've pointed out the 5 biggest stock buybacks, Wendy's being number one. Wendy's Incorporated, they said, jumped 6% after the company announced $500 million share repurchase authorization. Yeah, stock buybacks. That means that they couldn't figure out what to do with this $500 million windfall. We got all this cash laying around. What are we going to do with it? We're certainly not going to give it to the workers because we raised the prices and blamed them so we could get this $500 million. What are we going to do? Oh, we're going to enrich ourselves. And, well, that's what they've done. Also in that world of stock buybacks, Victoria's Secrets. Evidently, they've made a cool $250 million in excess profits that they want to buy back some shares with to enrich the CEOs. We're seeing these stock buybacks, which if you see this in the news, if you're a working person and you see this, you should be angry. You should be furious because that was stolen from you, from me, from working people. Well, how is that possible? Well, it's possible because in the past, before we had these kind of things, thanks Ronald Reagan, that profit was something that unions used to sit down and bargain for. Say, hey, you got $500 million in extra profits. How about we give some of that to the people who actually earned it? How about we have higher wages, better working conditions, better health care, better retirement security? I mean, stop and think about the fact that retirement security is gone. It's gone. There's no more retirement plans left. I still remember the defined benefit pension funds. I know it's hard to remember. You got to think back a while. But there used to be a thing called a defined benefit pension, where at the end of your years, you got X amount of dollars for the rest of your life. Gone. Now we give you these wonderful 401ks that nobody can afford to fund. And we're heading towards a retirement crisis, a tsunami of people who don't have anything set aside. and are literally going to have to work till they die because we got to keep feeding the profit monster. Because the profit monster wants more. It never ends. You look at the fact that, according to Oxfam, they found the pandemic years, 2020, 2021, 63% of all new global wealth was captured by the top 1%. What that means is the billionaires, our ultra wealthy, they gained an average of $1.7 million for every $1 in new wealth earned by those at the bottom. The rest of us, the 90% of us. Stop and think about that for a minute. Think about the enormity of that statement. Think of how screwed up our economic system is. And this is where, for me, it comes back to the politics. It comes back to, it matters who we elect. All of the other stuff is, all the outrage candy, all of the divisive stuff, all of that stuff aside, it's about, we're getting robbed daily. Corporate America is sticking it to us at every turn. And then, telling us, no, it's something else. It's inflation. It's not that we've made the choice to raise prices through the roof. It's not that people have seen a good opportunity to be greedy. Because again, remember, the free market, because we're sold this free market ideology. We're sold this from birth, that this is a free market economy. The only problem with a free market economy is you can't have a free market economy unless you have the freedom to abstain. That's what makes it free. Sorry, housing is something that, they don't let us live on the streets. Food isn't free. You have to, utilities, just to live. Heck, you go to jail, they're going to charge you. Or they might kill you. And we're in this moment where, again, we're still, the email I get from people is just outrageous on the divisive stuff. And you go, but what's really important is, how are we going to ensure that people are able to keep a roof over their head, food on the table, a future? But that's not where we are anymore. Corporate America has done a nice job. Nice job of muddying the waters, nice job of slicing and dicing and pitting us against each other. Why? Again, 63% of all new wealth on this planet was captured by the 1%. That's insane. Literally insane. So as I go through this, I can't help but think that this is a moment where we have got to come together and push back and be done. Be done with the divisiveness. Be done with the outrage candy. And say, you know what? It's about time we have an economic system that works for working people, a tax code that taxes the wealthy. Bring back the good socialist president, Dwight David Eisenhower. That's what I say. Quick break. Right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1865. That was the day General William T. Sherman issued Field Order Number 15. The order sought to redistribute 400,000 acres of land to freed blacks in 40-acre tracts. The area stretched from Charleston, South Carolina to Jacksonville, Florida, from the Atlantic Ocean to 30 miles inland. It also included many coastal islands, as well as Georgia's Sea Islands. Coming on the heels of Sherman's march to the sea, the order was issued from Savannah, Georgia. 4 days earlier, Sherman had met with 20 black ministers and the Secretary of War, Edwin Stanton. Sherman and Stanton asked the group a series of questions. How did they understand slavery, and what did freedom mean to them? When asked what the freedmen wanted most, Garrison Frazier, the group's spokesman, replied land. and when asked whether they would prefer to live among whites or not, they replied no, as the prejudice of whites would take years to overcome. The order provided for the immediate settlement of black refugees on confiscated land. Land redistribution to former slaves was radical policy to break the economic power of the Confederacy, punish South Carolina for starting the war, and begin to consolidate a new class of agricultural laborers. The land titles were possessory, however, and contingent upon the Freedmen's Bureau to award permanent titles. President Andrew Johnson moved quickly in the wake of Lincoln's assassination to overturn Field Order No. 15. Within a year, it would be reversed and confiscated lands would be returned to newly pardoned Confederates and plantation owners. The overturning of the order and later of Reconstruction would lay the basis for a new type of slavery, that of sharecropping, debt peonage, and contract labor. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Sometimes little things can be a big deal. For example, in considering ways to help protect Mother Earth from global environmental rampages by us humans, look out your window. In many cities and most suburbs, chances are you're looking at a lawn, a grass-carpeted yard that looks almost the same as the one next door, the one next to it, etc. Some see a lush expanse of green grass as the ultimate in landscaping beauty, and some even consider a well-manicured lawn to be a measure of one's moral character. Beauty and piety aside, though, the spread and intensification of lawn culture has become an environmental extravagance that is already unsustainable in whole sections of our country, and it adds up to a steadily increasing burden on Earth's essential resources. Grass itself is natural, but keeping it alive across thousands of square miles is not, for it requires a deluge of chemicals and endless rivers of water applied again and again, yard after yard, trying to keep those plots green. And, oh, the irony, their green includes eliminating bees, butterflies, and, well, nature. One statistic tells the tale. Americans use more than 10 times more poison per acre on lawns than America's farmers use on their crops. Just glance around you and you'll see the grass lawn imperative at work throughout your community. It surrounds local schools, greens up corporate complexes, spreads across college campuses, forms miles of golf courses, etc. This is Jim Hightower saying, this is not a diatribe against grassy plots, which can be natural joys. But let's get real, get creative, and get in touch with the full balance and beauty of nature. You can promote ground cover sanity right where you live with native plants, xeriscaping, organic methods, rain gardens, and rewilding your yard with things like prairie grass. For help, go to rewild.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as I said, I think education is the conservative battlefield. They're gearing up to finish off education, public education. Hey, Education Incorporated, the moneyed interests see it as the next profit center, but politicians see it as a way, well, to keep people in line. Don't ask too many questions, be a good one. And that's kind of frightening because for me, education is about expanding thought, asking questions, lots of them all the time, and not just falling into, being someone who Googles Martin Luther King Jr. and picks out a quote that fits your narrow-minded ideology and slap it out there like you'd be someone who'd be marching in Selma. Scary times we're in. That's why I've asked a teacher to come today and share some thoughts on, Martin Luther King Day and also the state of public education in the country. That's why I've asked Catherine Vaughn to come talk with us. She's an elementary art teacher, also a writer. Catherine, thanks for taking time for us.
Hi, Rick. Thanks for having me, and especially on this very important day. I fully believe that public education is a civil right. So to talk about it today on Martin Luther King Day seems very special.
Yeah, and you're from the Memphis area, so it seemed particularly fitting given the fact that, Dr. King was murdered in Memphis while they're, standing up for striking public sector workers, garbage workers who were literally dying on the job because of lack of voice, and to this day still don't have a pension. And that's kind of the education we don't get about Dr. King. We get the Google quotes that my Republican friends love to throw out.
That's exactly right. Yes, where I live, for your listeners' benefit, is I live about halfway in between Memphis and halfway in between where Alex Haley wrote Roots. So I am in a cotton field. I'm in an area that's been overlooked for a very long time and has seen a lot of struggle in recent years and throughout its past.
Now, education being one of those things that, again, I think has the opportunity to raise people up or to keep them sadly where they are. And I look at a lot of our inner cities. I look at a lot of our poverty-ridden areas. We're just not funding education. In fact, in Missouri, I understand there's some rural districts that have gone to a 4-day school week because they're just not funding education at the proper level. And also, I would argue that we're dividing the education dollars to hand off to profiteers for the latest gimmick, be it charters or cyber charters or whatever that next gimmick's going to be. What's going on in your state?
Yes, well, I couldn't agree with you more. Education, especially public education, is the great equalizer in our country. It's the one institution where you learn to work with people from all types of different backgrounds, demographics, religions, points of view. Nowhere else in America are people getting that type of exposure to diversity as they are in a public education classroom. Tennessee is one of the states that is at the forefront of this conservative rewriting of public ed. And we tend to pass more laws about public education than most other states in the nation. This last year, we saw CRT bans, we saw attacks on our public libraries and our classroom libraries. Tennessee has really had an interesting time in the last couple of years as far as education. We're incredibly defunded. My state is probably 40, and we're in the lower 40s when it comes to education funding. It's a battle here, and a lot of people are leaving.
Now, the education front, you point out that the theory about race that's critical, that everyone on the right is all lathered up about. I see it as just learning basic history. Now, back in 2015, we did a civil rights tour here as part of the show. And we went to a lot, every state throughout the South, and a lot of places where they've now put up, civil rights institutes and museums and tourist traps of going, hey, look how bad we were to people. Come to partake in our tourism. Disaster tourism is what I've been calling it. And the images and the history that is in those places is seriously disturbing. And I think something that needs to be learned so that maybe, I don't know, maybe in 2021 you don't have Fort Smith, Arkansas, a little sheriff's department letting a man starve to death in their jail. Maybe that doesn't happen in the 2020s. Maybe we learn from the history. Maybe we don't starve black people to death in jail. I don't know, just a thought.
Yeah, learning about the history and the culture of other people never made me feel, and this is what Republicans say, it will make students feel bad about their whiteness. Learning about others never made me personally feel bad about my whiteness. It made me have empathy for others and an understanding and compassion about the human story that others are experiencing. And, it makes you a better person to learn about other people and the struggles that they've gone through. So why would we not want to teach our children that?
Well, I think part of it has, there's a political ideology in this country that, that some of my, I'm not going to call them friends, some of the white supremacist folks, some of the white nationalist folks don't want you to think about.
Right.
And that's angering and frustrating because we can be a much better society. And I'm struggling on this day because I started today's show off with a story about a guy, 50-year-old man, 200-pound guy who was starved to death in a jail cell because I don't know. I can't figure out what it is about us that would allow your humanity to just go away from you. And I'm struggling in this moment. I'm really struggling here.
Yeah, we definitely have a crisis of compassion and empathy and civility in our country right now. People treat each other worse than I think I've seen in my lifetime. And it's really disturbing. And I can't see it at this moment getting better.
So how do we turn this around? I mean, I'm with you. I don't know how we get out of this. I don't know how we bridge these gaps because people are in their silos and they're just throwing bombs at each other. We don't even talk to each other anymore. I used to have conservative friends that I used to love to argue with because you could have a good spirited conversation, a good argument, and then you'd walk away and slap each other on the back and go, "Oh, you're still an idiot," and you'd go on with your day. Now it's this kind of visceral hatred that you disagree with me. How dare you? I'm and I think it comes back to our education system.
I agree with you. When I last year during the pandemic, our governor Bill Lee in Tennessee signed the CRT bill into law, and I signed a letter along with the Tennessee Educators of Color as an advocate member asking him to veto the bill. We didn't have enough information on it at the time. My name was leaked to my local Republican Party in my town as being the only teacher in my area to have signed this bill. And being 8 months pregnant at the time, I was targeted. And my husband gave me mace. I wasn't allowed to go places by myself. And that was an incredible experience to have. It was incredibly scary and, not something I think would have happened 10 or 12 or 15 years ago. It's just the place where we are in America right now. We just do not have understanding for each other.
Or compassion. I mean, as a teacher, I look to you as someone who I entrust with you my most valuable resource, our children. And to have people say, "Oh, you're some of the arrows you guys take, would never in a million years do your job. Thank you for doing it." Because of this, look, I mean, I don't know how you get up every day and go, "I'm going to give it my all. I'm going to shape the hearts and minds of the kids of the future of this country," and then to have people throw these kind of hate-filled arrows at you. I don't know how you do it.
It's definitely a challenge. And also, we kind of see the humor in it in a way. This last year, when the kitty litter controversy came out, where, I guess QAnon was talking about how we have litter boxes in our classrooms for children that identify as furries. And I just thought, I don't get paid enough as a teacher in general. I'm definitely not cleaning a litter box on top of my daily duties, nor is my janitor who's paid $7.25 an hour. Like, we're not doing that. I do, however, have kitty litter in my classroom, but for a completely different reason. I have kitty litter in my classroom for a lockdown bucket. I have a painter's bucket in the corner with kitty litter and basically child-sized MREs in case we are in a lockdown situation for longer than a few hours, and kids are going to need to use a restroom. So
now that's deadly serious. Now,
that is deadly serious.
Because I was just reading a story before I went on air of the 6-year-old kid who came in and shot his teacher, and they're like, "Well, we searched his backpack,